My name is Victoria, and I'm 34 years old. When people ask me how I built my consulting empire, I always smile and say it started with the worst Monday morning of my life. But honestly, that Monday was also the best thing that ever happened to me. I'd been working at Meridian Manufacturing for 14 years, almost half my life at that point. I started there right out of college as a junior purchasing assistant, making $32,000 a year and thinking I was living the dream. The company manufactured industrial equipment, and I fell in love with the complexity of it all. Supply chains, vendor negotiations, quality control. It was like solving puzzles every single day. Over the years, I worked my way up to procurement manager. The journey wasn't always smooth. I remember my first major negotiation disaster when I was 26. I'd been so nervous about a steel pricing meeting that I accidentally agreed to terms that would have cost us an extra $50,000. My boss at the time, Margaret Chen, could have thrown me under the bus, but instead she spent 3 hours teaching me how to read between the lines in vendor proposals and how to build leverage through relationship management. By the time I became procurement manager, I wasn't just ordering paper clips and office supplies. I was managing multi-million-dollar contracts with suppliers across 3 continents. Raw steel from Pittsburgh, precision components from Germany, electronics from Taiwan. I knew every vendor personally, their families, their kids' names, their vacation schedules. These weren't just business relationships. They were friendships built over years of trust. I remember the year Roberto's steel plant had a fire that shut down their main production line for 3 weeks. Instead of scrambling for alternative suppliers and leaving him hanging, I worked with our engineering team to adjust our production schedule and actually increased our orders once he was back online. That kind of loyalty? It goes both ways. When we needed emergency delivery of specialty steel components during the Texas freeze that shut down half the industrial suppliers in the region, Roberto literally chartered a private truck to get us what we needed. The thing about procurement that most people don't understand is that it's not just about getting the lowest price. Anyone can do that. It's about building partnerships that create value over time. When you have vendors who trust you, who know you'll be fair and pay on time and treat them with respect, they'll move mountains for you when things get tough. My office overlooked the factory floor, and every morning I'd watch our workers assembling the equipment that kept power plants running across the country. I felt proud knowing that my negotiations kept our costs competitive and our quality high. The vendors trusted me, the internal teams relied on me, and honestly, I thought I was indispensable. I should have known something was up when Marcus Webb, our new VP of operations, started asking weird questions about my department. He'd been with the company for only 8 months, brought in from some consulting firm to optimize our processes. He had this annoying habit of using buzzwords like synergize and leverage core competencies in every sentence. But more than that, he seemed to view every department as a potential cost center to be minimized rather than understanding how the pieces fit together. I remember the first time he attended one of our vendor review meetings. I was presenting our quarterly performance metrics, on-time delivery rates, quality scores, cost savings initiatives, and he kept interrupting with questions like, what's our backup plan if the supplier fails? And, how quickly could we replace this vendor relationship? It was like watching someone look at a vintage watch and asking why we needed so many tiny parts when a digital clock would be simpler. He didn't understand that those relationships, those carefully negotiated contracts, that institutional knowledge, it was all interconnected. You couldn't just swap out pieces without affecting the entire system. The other red flag should have been when he started scheduling process mapping sessions with my team without inviting me. My assistant, Kelly, mentioned that he'd been asking detailed questions about our vendor contact databases, contract filing systems, and signature authorities. At the time, I thought he was just trying to understand our operations better. I actually felt bad that I'd been judging him so harshly. Maybe he was genuinely trying to learn the business. Victoria, he said one Thursday afternoon, standing in my doorway with his tablet and that fake smile. I'm curious about your vendor relationships. How would you describe the dependency structure? I looked up from the steel pricing reports I was reviewing. Dependency structure? Marcus, these suppliers have been with us for years. We have excellent contracts, locked-in pricing, and... Right. But from a risk management perspective, having so much institutional knowledge concentrated in one role, well, it creates vulnerabilities, doesn't it? I just stood there like, really? Did this guy just call my expertise a vulnerability? Marcus, I've saved this company over $2 million in the past 3 years alone through strategic negotiations and relationship management. I'm not sure what vulnerability you're seeing. He did that thing where he tilted his head and smiled like he was explaining something to a child. Of course, Victoria. Your contributions have been noted. I'm just thinking about scalability and process optimization. I should have started updating my resume right then. But I loved my job, loved the company, and honestly, I couldn't imagine them being stupid enough to mess with something that was working perfectly. The vendors had become like an extended family to me. There was Roberto from Precision Steel Solutions, who always asked about my mom's recovery from her hip surgery. His company had been our primary steel supplier for 8 years, and over that time, I'd watched his operation grow from a small regional company to one of the most respected suppliers in the Midwest. When his daughter got married 2 years ago, he actually invited me to the wedding. I couldn't go because of a work conflict, but the fact that he thought to include me said everything about our relationship. Then there was Linda from Component Dynamics, who sent Christmas cards every year and remembered my birthday without fail. She'd started her business 15 years ago as a single mom trying to make ends meet, machining precision parts in her garage. I'd been working with her for 6 years, and I'd watched her company grow to employ 43 people in a state-of-the-art facility. When she needed references for a major bank loan 2 years ago, I wrote a letter detailing her perfect delivery record and exceptional quality standards. That loan helped her expand into aerospace components, which tripled her revenue. And James from Advanced Electronics, whose daughter had just started college. Partially funded, I like to think, by the steady business I'd been sending his way. James was brilliant but terrible at business development. He could design electronic components that would make your head spin, but he was hopeless at sales presentations and relationship building. Over the 4 years we'd been working together, I'd become not just his biggest client but also his mentor in understanding what companies really needed from suppliers. I'd introduced him to 2 other procurement managers who became major clients, and his business had grown from a one-man operation in his basement to a proper company with 12 employees. These relationships weren't just about contracts and purchase orders. When Meridian needed rush deliveries for emergency repairs, my vendors moved mountains to help us. I remember last spring when one of our main production lines went down on a Friday afternoon due to a failed electronic controller. If we couldn't get it fixed by Monday, we'd miss delivery deadlines for 3 major clients. James literally worked through the weekend, hand-building a replacement component that normally would have taken 2 weeks to manufacture. He drove it to our facility himself at 6 a.m. Monday morning. That level of service doesn't come from contract terms. It comes from relationships built on mutual respect and trust. I had sole signature authority on all long-term pricing agreements. It made sense. I understood the technical specifications, the market conditions, and the vendor's capabilities better than anyone else in the company. The legal department handled the contract language, but the pricing, delivery terms, and performance metrics? That was all me. My typical week involved juggling maybe 15 different negotiations, monitoring market prices for raw materials, coordinating with our engineering team on new component specifications, and maintaining relationships with 43 active suppliers. I worked late most nights, not because I had to, but because I genuinely cared about getting everything right. The irony is that I was actually having my best year ever. I just negotiated a 3-year deal with our primary steel supplier that was going to save us $400,000 annually. It hadn't been easy. Steel prices had been volatile all year due to trade policy changes, and most suppliers were pushing for shorter-term contracts with built-in price escalation clauses. But Roberto and I had worked together to find a creative solution. We agreed to slightly higher base pricing in exchange for locked rates and guaranteed availability, which actually saved us money compared to the market volatility we'd been experiencing. I'd also just completed a vendor consolidation project that reduced our supplier base from 67 companies to 43 without compromising quality or availability. This wasn't just about cutting suppliers. It was about strengthening relationships with our best partners and eliminating the vendors who'd been causing headaches with late deliveries and quality issues. The consolidation was saving us $18,000 annually just in administrative costs, plus another $32,000 in improved bulk pricing discounts. Our on-time delivery rates were at 97%, and quality metrics were the highest they'd been in company history. Customer satisfaction scores for our deliveries had improved by 12% year-over-year. I was actually scheduled to present these results to the board of directors the following month as part of the annual operations review. I'd been working on the presentation for weeks, compiling data that showed how strategic vendor management was directly contributing to our competitive advantage. But apparently, none of that mattered to the new management team. In Marcus's world, success was measured in org charts and reporting structures, not in actual business results. But apparently, none of that mattered to the new management team. That Monday morning started like any other. I grabbed my coffee from the break room. Extra shot of espresso because I'd stayed late the night before finalizing a contract modification. I was actually in a great mood. The weekend had been perfect. Dinner with friends, a long hike, and I just finished reading this fascinating book about supply chain innovations in the automotive industry. I settled into my desk and was checking my emails when Marcus appeared in my doorway again. But this time he wasn't alone. Janet from HR was with him, carrying a manila folder and wearing her difficult conversation expression. My stomach dropped instantly. You know that feeling when you're in an elevator and it drops too fast? That's exactly what happened to my entire body in that moment. Victoria, could we have a word? Marcus said, stepping into my office and closing the door behind him. Janet sat down across from my desk and opened the folder. Victoria, as you know, Meridian has been evaluating our organizational structure to ensure we're positioned for future growth and efficiency. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. Okay. Marcus jumped in with his consultant speak. We've made the difficult decision to restructure our middle management positions to create a more streamlined operational framework. Unfortunately, your position is being eliminated effective immediately. Immediately. After 14 years, the word that stood out to me was, immediately. I'm sorry, what? I think I actually laughed. It was so absurd. You're firing me? We're eliminating the position, Janet corrected, like that somehow made it better. This isn't about your performance. You've done excellent work. This is about organizational optimization. I looked back and forth between them. And who's going to handle vendor relationships? The contracts? The negotiations that save this company millions of dollars every year? Marcus smiled that patronizing smile again. We'll be distributing those responsibilities across existing team members and potentially bringing in some external consulting support for specialized negotiations. That's when it really hit me. They had no idea what I actually did. They saw procurement manager on an org chart and thought it was just about ordering supplies and processing invoices. They didn't understand that I was the thread holding together a complex web of relationships and agreements that kept their entire operation running. Marcus, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you realize that I have sole signature authority on contracts worth over $12 million annually? Do you understand that these vendor relationships took years to build? We'll transition those responsibilities appropriately, he said dismissively. Janet slid a packet across my desk. This is your severance package. 2 weeks pay, continuation of your health insurance for 60 days, and a non-compete clause that. Non-compete? I interrupted. You're firing me and trying to prevent me from working in my field? It's standard, Marcus said. We need to protect our vendor relationships and proprietary processes. I actually started laughing at that point. Proprietary processes? The processes that I had developed over 14 years? The relationships that I had built through my own effort and expertise? I need you to pack up your personal items and return your company equipment, Janet continued. Security will escort you out within the hour. Security escort. Like I was some kind of criminal instead of someone who had dedicated more than a decade of my life to making this company successful. I sat there for a moment, just processing the situation. Then something clicked into place. Call it survival instinct or just pure stubbornness. I'll need to contact my vendors to transfer the contract authorities, I said calmly. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. That won't be necessary. We'll handle the transition internally. That's when I realized they really had no clue what they were doing. Marcus, these are legal agreements with specific signature requirements. You can't just handle it internally. Victoria, Janet said firmly, please just focus on packing your things. The business transition details will be managed appropriately. I packed my personal items in a daze. Photos of my family, the little succulent plant my mom had given me, my favorite coffee mug, a few books. 14 years of my professional life reduced to a cardboard box. As security walked me to my car, and yes, they actually did that. I felt this weird mix of devastation and anger and something else I couldn't quite identify. The security guard, Tony, had been with the company almost as long as I had. He kept apologizing under his breath as we walked through the parking lot. "This is complete bullshit, Victoria," he muttered, glancing around to make sure no one could hear him. "Everyone knows you're the reason this place runs as smooth as it does. My wife works in accounting, and she says the vendors have been calling all morning asking what the hell is going on." That comment stuck with me. It wasn't until I was sitting in my car in the parking lot that I realized what that other feeling was. Opportunity. But first, I needed to process what had just happened. I called my mom. "They did what?" she practically shouted into the phone. "After 14 years? Victoria, honey, that's not just unfair. It's stupid. Do they have any idea what you do for that company?" "Apparently not," I said, and I could hear my voice cracking a little. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality of being unemployed was starting to hit. "Mom, I don't even know where to start. I've been at Meridian for so long, I'm not sure I even remember how to look for a job." "Well, the first thing you're going to do is come over for dinner tonight, and we're going to figure this out together. And the second thing you're going to do is realize that this might be the best thing that ever happened to you. You've been carrying that entire company on your shoulders for years, and they've been taking you for granted. Now maybe it's time to find people who appreciate what you bring to the table." Moms always know exactly what to say, don't they? See, Marcus and Janet had made a crucial mistake. They assumed that vendor relationships belonged to the company, not to the people who built them. They thought contracts were just pieces of paper that could be transferred from one person to another like office supplies. But here's what they didn't understand. I didn't just manage vendor relationships. I was the vendor relationship for most of these suppliers. When Roberto from Precision Steel had questions about specifications, he called my direct line. When Linda needed clarification on delivery schedules, she emailed me personally. When James had concerns about payment terms, he texted me. Over the next few days, as word got out about my departure, my phone started ringing constantly. Not with job offers, though those came later, but with confused and concerned vendors. "Victoria, what's going on?" Roberto called me Tuesday morning. "I got this weird email from someone named Marcus asking me to redirect all communications to him, but our contract specifically requires your signature on any modifications." "They let me go," I told him simply. "Restructuring." There was a long pause. "After 14 years? Are you kidding me?" "Wish I were." "Well, what does this mean for our agreements?" "I've got a shipment scheduled for next week, and the pricing modifications we discussed last month, those still need your signature to be valid." That's when I started to understand the full scope of what Meridian had done to themselves. "Roberto, I can't sign anything for Meridian anymore. You'll need to work with whoever they assign to replace me." But there is no replacement. This Marcus guy doesn't know anything about our industry, let alone our specific agreements. "Victoria, we've been doing business for 8 years. I trust you, not some company that fires people who've been keeping their operation running." Linda called Wednesday afternoon with similar concerns. "Victoria, honey, I'm so sorry to hear what happened. But I need to ask, what's the legal status of our contracts now? Our agreement specifically states that pricing changes require your approval and signature." "I'm not with Meridian anymore, Linda. They'll have to figure out new signature authorities." "Well, until they do, I can't modify any terms or pricing. And honestly, after seeing how they treated you, I'm not sure I want to do business with them at all." By Thursday, I'd received calls from 31 of my 43 vendors. They weren't just expressing sympathy. They were expressing serious concerns about continuing their relationships with Meridian. Many of them had contracts that specifically named me as the authorized representative for negotiations and modifications. Friday afternoon, James from Advanced Electronics called with news that made everything crystal clear. "Victoria, I just got off the phone with this Marcus character. He wanted to renegotiate our pricing structure, claiming that you'd agreed to terms that were unsustainable. When I told him that was impossible since we'd locked in pricing for 2 years with your signature last month, he got angry and threatened to find other suppliers." "He threatened you?" "Basically told me I could accept his new terms or lose the business. So I told him exactly what he could do with his new terms, and then I called our legal department. Turns out, without your signature, They can't modify our existing contracts. And get this, they can't even receive our scheduled shipments because the receiving protocols require your authorization code. That's when I realized Meridian wasn't just facing a transition problem. They were facing a complete operational shutdown. I spent the weekend thinking. Really thinking. I'd always been good at strategic planning in business, but I'd never applied those skills to my own career. I'd been comfortable, maybe even complacent. But now, looking at the situation from the outside, I could see possibilities I'd never considered before. Monday morning, I called my lawyer. Not to sue Meridian, though the non-compete clause was clearly unenforceable given their breach, but to discuss starting my own consulting firm. I'd been managing vendor relationships and procurement negotiations for 14 years. Why couldn't I do that for multiple companies? By Tuesday, I'd registered Sterling Procurement Solutions as an LLC and set up a basic website. By Wednesday, I'd called Roberto back. Roberto, I wanted to follow up on our conversation. I know you're concerned about your relationship with Meridian, but I want you to know that I'm starting my own consulting firm. If you're interested, I could potentially represent other companies in negotiations with Precision Steel. Victoria, I've been hoping you'd call. We've been doing business for 8 years, and in all that time, you've never once asked for something that wasn't fair for both sides. Meridian? They've been calling all week demanding immediate price cuts and threatening to cancel contracts. Frankly, I'm ready to walk away from them entirely. But if you can bring me other clients who operate with your level of professionalism. Within 2 weeks, I had signed 5 vendors as preferred partners for my consulting firm. These weren't just any suppliers. These were the core companies that Meridian relied on for their most critical components. Steel, electronics, precision manufacturing, quality control services, and logistics. And then the calls from potential clients started coming in. Turns out, word travels fast in the manufacturing sector. When other procurement managers heard that Meridian had let me go, and when they started hearing about vendor concerns, they began reaching out. Not to gossip, to offer me work. Victoria, we've been watching your success at Meridian for years, said Patricia Wong from Industrial Solutions Group. If you're available for consulting work, we'd love to discuss bringing you on to handle our vendor negotiations. Within a month, I had 3 consulting contracts. Within 2 months, I had 7. By the 6-month mark, Sterling Procurement Solutions was generating more revenue than my old salary at Meridian, and I was working with companies that actually valued my expertise. But the best part? Watching Meridian try to manage without the relationships and contracts I'd built. Marcus called me 6 weeks after they'd fired me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Victoria, I hope you're doing well, he started, trying to sound casual. I'm calling because we're having some transition challenges with a few of our vendors. I was wondering if you might be available for some short-term consulting to help smooth things over. I actually had to put him on hold because I was laughing so hard. When I came back, I kept my voice professional. Marcus, I appreciate the call, but I'm quite busy with my own clients right now. What kind of transition challenges are you experiencing? Well, some of our suppliers are claiming they can't fulfill orders without specific authorization protocols that apparently only you knew about. And there seem to be some pricing disputes based on contracts that aren't clearly documented in our systems. I see. Have you tried explaining to them that I was part of the organizational optimization? There was a long pause. Victoria, could we possibly set up a meeting to discuss bringing you back? Perhaps in a consulting capacity initially, with the potential for a permanent position. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Marcus. I have non-compete agreements with my current clients that would prevent me from working with their competitors. But I wish you the best of luck with your transition. The non-compete agreements were real, by the way. But they were with MY clients, protecting them from competitors who might try to poach me away. Funny how that works. From what I heard through industry contacts, Meridian's situation got worse before it got better. 3 of their major suppliers terminated contracts due to communication breakdowns and operational inconsistencies. Their production schedule fell behind by 6 weeks when they couldn't get replacement components. And their costs increased by almost 30% as they scrambled to find new vendors willing to work with their, let's call it, challenging management style. The final irony came 8 months later, when Patricia Wong mentioned that Industrial Solutions Group was considering acquiring some of Meridian's market share. Their quality has been inconsistent lately, and we're hearing complaints from their customers about delivery delays. It's created opportunities for companies with more reliable operations. I smiled and made a note to contact James from Advanced Electronics. I had a feeling Industrial Solutions might be interested in his manufacturing capabilities. Today, Sterling Procurement Solutions represents 12 major manufacturing companies and maintains preferred partnerships with over 60 suppliers across 4 industries. I've got 6 employees, an office overlooking the river, and revenue that's grown by 40% year over year. But the most satisfying part isn't the money or the success. It's the relationships. Roberto and I still talk every week, and his company has expanded their operations thanks to the new business I've brought them. Linda's Component Dynamics just opened a second facility. James's daughter is thriving in college, and he frequently jokes that I'm the best thing that ever happened to his retirement fund. Marcus Webb left Meridian last month, according to LinkedIn. Apparently, he's looking for new opportunities in organizational optimization and strategic restructuring. I genuinely hope he finds a position where his skills are a better fit. As for me, I learned something important that awful Monday morning. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing that could happen to you. You just don't know it at the time. They called it restructuring, but I was the one holding the vendor contracts. And when they let me go, I took those relationships and turned them into something bigger and better than I ever could have imagined within their organizational constraints. I still drive past Meridian sometimes on my way to client meetings. The parking lot isn't as full as it used to be, but I don't feel angry when I see it anymore. I feel grateful. They gave me the push I needed to build something that's truly mine. And that's worth more than any severance package they could have offered.